I started this as a road trip in my head, just tracing a line across Canada to see how far the comparison could really stretch. Then it stopped feeling like a joke. I found a Nova Scotia town of about 2,400 people, with rainbow houses, tumbling into a working harbour, the closest thing we have to Cinque Terre. I found a desert lake town of around 5,500 ringed by vineyards. I found a smelter city where bocce balls still click behind an Italian lodge from 1905. And I kept asking the same question: why is this so much cheaper here? If that question pulls at you too, subscribe and come with me. Number 1 is the one I couldn't stop thinking about. Number 12, Invermere, British Columbia. We start in the Columbia Valley, in a district municipality of around 4,000 people in summer, fewer once the snow comes. Invermere sits on Lake Windermere, with the Purcell and Rocky Mountains wrapped around the water. The lake is that pale alpine turquoise. If you squint, it's the mountain end of an Italian lake, the part where the peaks lean right over the shoreline. I'll say it plainly. This is the softest Italy match on the list. It's here because the feeling is right, not because the architecture is. People imagine a cheap lake cabin they can still afford. What they find is a busier, pricier resort town. Calgary is about 3 hours away, and Calgary money has been reshaping the waterfront for years. Homes around Windermere commonly list anywhere from $400,000 to over $800,000 Canadian dollars. Those are listing figures, not a hard benchmark, so take them loosely. Still, it's cheaper than Canmore or Banff next door. What changed is simple. Remote workers and second home buyers arrived, and the bargain thinned. Summers are packed. Shoulder seasons go quiet. The restaurant and tourism staff who keep the place running struggle to find a rental they can afford. Picture a row of weathered cabins facing turquoise water, the docks already empty under the first snow, the peaks glowing pink at dusk. Honestly, this one earns its spot on atmosphere alone. The Italy here is a mood, not a monument, but the next town actually looks the part in stone, so let's keep going. Number 11, Elora, Ontario. This is a community inside the township of Centre Wellington, in Wellington County. The Elora and Salem area holds roughly 8,700 people, and it genuinely looks European. Honey-colored limestone buildings stand right over a dramatic river gorge, cliffs cut 22 meters deep into the rock. It reads like a stone hill town in Umbria, perched above a canyon. So why is it down at number 11? Because of the second half of the title. The affordability part has slipped here. Centre Wellington's own 2024 housing report says the average home price has pushed well past 700,000 Canadian dollars, and the municipality openly admits affordability has eroded. What changed is the Toronto and Waterloo corridor. Commuters arrived, short-term rentals arrived, weekend crowds packed the gorge in summer. The stone beauty is fully intact, the small-town price is not. For locals, that means cafes and galleries do well, but younger families and service workers get pushed out of the housing they grew up in. Picture those limestone faces reflected in the Grand River at golden hour, the old mill standing over the water, and a parking lot that fills by 10 in the morning. I almost left this one off, but I think honesty matters more than a clean list. Elora is the warning. Beauty doesn't always stay cheap. The next place keeps the European look and brings the price back down. Stay with me. Number 10, Caslow, British Columbia. Now we go small. A village of about 1,000 people on the west shore of Kootenay Lake, deep in the West Kootenay. And the geometry here is uncanny. Kootenay Lake is long, deep, and fjord-like, with steep forested mountains walling it in. It's the closest thing in Canada to a narrow Italian lake, Como or Iseo, with a tiny historic village right at the water's edge. The Village Housing Report from 2024 tells the affordability story without drama. Supply is tight, but a single-family home here can cost less than a Vancouver condo. Exact sale prices are thin in a market this small, so I'll leave it at that. What changed is gentle. Retirees, artists, and remote workers have been drifting in, looking for a slow lake life. The trade-off is the catch. This place is hours from any city, with limited services and long winters. For locals, a small and aging population means fewer services, and newcomers help keep the village alive even as tight housing pressures renters. Picture the old steamship, the SS Moi, beached on the shore as a museum, the dark lake behind it, mountains plunging straight into the water. Here's the detail I keep coming back to. This town didn't try to look European. It just does, and almost nobody outside the Kootenays knows it exists. The next one trades mountains for the ocean. Let's go. Number 9. Powell River, British Columbia. On the Sunshine Coast, reachable only by ferry, sits a city of about 13,900 people, now part of the Cathet region. The pull here is the historic town site, a planned mill town, paired with a real Italian and European immigrant history and a warm, oceanfront bluff setting. Parts of it carry that Ligurian working village texture, heritage homes stacked above the sea. And the price is the real story. Detached homes here frequently list around 500 to 600,000 Canadian dollars, with townsite homes seen near 549,000. Those are listings, not a benchmark, but they're consistent, and they're a world away from Vancouver, which sits just a ferry and drive away. What changed is the mill. It built this town, drew waves of immigrants, then wound down and reshaped everything. The town reinvented itself around affordability, arts, and ocean lifestyle. Buyers from Vancouver and the island started arriving for views they could finally afford. For locals, the mill's decline hit jobs hard, but lower prices keep pulling in retirees and remote workers who fill the cafes and the old theater. The ferry, though, is a constant cost and a constant wait. Picture the Patricia Theatre, lit since 1913, one of Canada's oldest continuously operating cinemas, still glowing on a quiet street above the water. I love that an old mill town became an arts town by accident, but the ferry keeps it a secret, and the next stop crosses the whole country. Number 8. Saint-Jean-Port-Joli, Quebec. We jump to the south shore of the St. Lawrence River, to a riverside village of about 3,300 people in the Chaudière-Appalaches region. This is a place of stone churches, wood carving studios, and old-world Quebecois architecture. To North American eyes, it reads like an old European coastal village, compact, steepled, artisan. On price, the evidence is regional rather than village-specific, so I'll be careful. Rural Chaudière-Appalaches stays among Canada's more affordable markets, and Quebec's province-wide average, around 568,000 Canadian dollars, hides far lower rural pricing underneath it. Village homes here commonly sell well below that average. What changed isn't decline so much as quiet. The town became Quebec's woodcarving capital, built on craft, art, and the river. Tourism fills the galleries and festivals in summer, then the long winter empties the streets again. For locals, craft and tourism sustain the studios and restaurants in season, but the year-round population skews older, and jobs are limited. Picture a silver-roofed stone church above the wide gray river, and a carver's workshop with wood shavings curling across the floor. One honest note: daily life here runs in French. You'd need to be comfortable in the language to settle in. That's not a flaw, just a reality. The next town climbs back into the mountains and brings the prices way down. Stay with me. Number 7. Rossland, British Columbia. Back to the West Kootenay, to a city of about 4,100 people, cradled in the mountains below Red Mountain Resort. Steep streets, historic brick, peaks rising right behind the rooftops. It has that alpine silhouette, the look of a small town tucked into the Italian Dolomites, and it shares the deep Italian mining heritage of the valley below it. Here the numbers get friendlier. Trail's 2025 housing report puts Rossland's single detached homes around 350,000 Canadian dollars on average. That's the highest in its regional district, and still a fraction of British Columbia's provincial average, which sits north of 960,000 Canadian dollars. What changed is the reinvention. Rossland was an 1890s gold mining boomtown, once one of British Columbia's largest cities. When the gold faded, it became a ski and mountain bike town. Now outdoor lifestyle buyers and remote workers are arriving, and prices are creeping up. For locals, the outdoor economy supports cafes and gear shops, while rising prices and limited supply squeeze renters and seasonal staff. Picture brick storefronts climbing a steep main street, snow-dusted peaks standing directly over the rooftops. I'll say this carefully. The price is real, but so is the isolation. Cheap and remote usually travel together. Rossland is no exception. The next place is an island, and one of the cheapest spots on this entire list. Let's keep going. Number 6. Pelee Island, Ontario. Canada's southernmost inhabited place. A single-tier township out in Lake Erie, with a year-round population of only a few hundred, somewhere around 200 to 300, that swells toward 1,500 in summer. It's flat, sun-soaked, and covered in vineyards, with winemaking history going back to the 1860s. It carries that quiet, end-of-the-road Mediterranean island mood, a place where the season ends and the world goes still. And the price range is striking. Island listings run from lots and cottages around 60 to 120,000 Canadian dollars, up to waterfront homes near 650,000. Realtor listings have started as low as 59,900. It's a thin market, so those are listings, not averages. But here's where it gets complicated. The cheap land comes with the heaviest trade-offs on this list. The island is ferry only. In winter, almost everything closes. The year-round community is tiny, and population decline threatens the school and basic services. Picture rows of grapevines running to a flat lake horizon, and a single ferry pulling away as the last of the season leaves with it. Honestly, this is the one I'd call a dream and a warning in the same breath. It's affordable because it's hard. That's the whole story. We're now crossing into the strongest half of the list, and the best is still ahead. Quick pause, because the next stretch is where this really pays off. The places coming up are the ones with the strongest evidence, the clearest stories, and the most striking before and after. If you've made it this far, you're exactly the kind of person I make these for, so stick around. The town at number 1 is the one I genuinely couldn't stop thinking about. Number 5, Knowlton, Quebec. In the eastern townships, on Brome Lake, sits Knowlton, a community within the town of Loch Brome, which holds about 5,900 people. This is Quebec's wine country. A lakeside village wrapped in rolling vineyard and orchard hills, the kind of soft European landscape people travel to Italy or the Swiss border to find. But this is my second affordability caution, so I'll be honest. Knowlton has gone upscale. Premium homes here command strong prices per square foot, and current luxury listings climb past 1 million Canadian dollars. Affordability here means cheaper than Italy's Lake District, not cheap outright. What changed is Montreal. The city is about 90 minutes away, and Montreal money has been driving second home demand for years, lifting prices in the village core. For locals, tourism and second homes keep the boutiques and restaurants alive, but they push prices beyond many residents, and the year-round community skews older and wealthier. Picture a white clapboard village mirrored in still lake water, vineyard rows on the hills behind, and antique shop windows glowing at dusk. Here's my honest take. Knowlton is gorgeous, and it absolutely belongs on a list about looking like Europe. But if your dream was a bargain, the bargain moved to the next town over. That's how these places change. Now we get the same Mediterranean look with the heat to match. Let's go. Number 4, Osoyoos, British Columbia. In the south, Okanagan sits a town of about 5,500 people, on a warm blue lake in the only true desert in Canada. This might be the strongest landscape match on the whole list. Bare golden hills, terraced vineyards dropping to the water, hot summers, a swimmable lake, wine in every direction. It's a sun-baked southern Italian scene, just with a Canadian highway running through it. On affordability, it's mixed, and I'll show you both sides. Home ownership runs around 81%, but the town's own housing strategy warns that new detached homes are priced far beyond local incomes, and the population over 85 is projected to more than double. Listings range from condos around 215,000 Canadian dollars up past 800,000 for a lake home. What changed is retirement. Osoyoos went from an orchard and ranching town to one of Canada's most popular retirement and wine destinations, and that demand pushed prices up. For locals, the retiree influx supports services and real estate, but it strains healthcare and pushes housing out of reach for young families and the workers who run the place. Picture vineyard terraces falling to a turquoise lake under a desert sun, and a lone fruit stand sign on a hot, empty stretch of highway. So can you afford it? Maybe, through a condo, not a detached lake home. The detached dream has already outrun most local wages. The next town is the one that finally nails the colorful Italy postcard. Stay with me. Number 3, Lunenburg, Nova Scotia. On the south shore of Nova Scotia, a town of about 2,400 people and a UNESCO World Heritage Site. This is the postcard. Red, ochre, blue, and green wooden houses tumbling down to a working harbor. It is the closest Canadian visual to Cinque Terre, that rainbow on the water shot people fly across the world for. And here, finally, the affordability story holds up where it counts. The town core is pricier, yes, but Lunenburg County still has homes listed under 200,000 Canadian dollars, and the town's own housing report tracks the affordability pressures honestly. The genuinely cheap stock is in the county around the famous core. What changed is the cod. Lunenburg was a 1753 planned settlement that became one of Canada's great fishing and shipbuilding ports, home of the Bluenose. The fishery collapsed, and tourism and heritage took over. The colorful houses are as much backdrop now as workplace. For locals, tourism sustains the restaurants, inns, and galleries, while short-term rentals and heritage demand lift-core prices. The county, though, stays reachable for buyers. Picture a row of crimson, gold, and teal houses mirrored in the harbor at dawn. Fishing boats still tied at the wharf, fog lifting off the water. I'll be straight. This is the one that genuinely looks like Italy, and parts of it are genuinely affordable. That combination is rarer than you'd think. 2 towns left, and both bring the real Italian connection. Let's finish this. Number 2, Oliver, British Columbia. Back to the South Okanagan, to a town of just over 5,000 people, with the surrounding rural area pushing it toward 9,000. And it carries an official title, the wine capital of Canada. This is the Tuscany match. Wall-to-wall vineyards on warm benchland, golden hills baking in the sun, winery estates on the Golden Mile and the Black Sage Bench. Of all the wine country towns, this is the one that best earns the comparison, and the price story is the cleanest yet. Oliver runs materially cheaper than the glamour markets nearby. Naramata's benchmark sits around 665,000 Canadian dollars, and Penticton's single-family median hit about 823,000 in early 2025. Oliver sits below them, the value play in Canada's wine country. What changed is reputation, or the lack of it. Oliver began as a 1920s irrigation and orchard project, named for a premier, and became the heart of Canadian wine. But it never picked up the resort cachet of Kelowna or Naramata, so the prices stayed lower. Now retirees and remote buyers are arriving. For locals, wine tourism and agriculture anchor the jobs, while rising interest slowly lifts prices and pressures. The seasonal workers who pick the grapes and pour the wine. Picture endless vineyard rows on a golden bench at sunset. A hand-painted winery sign on a quiet 2-lane road, the hills shimmering in the heat. Here's my honest read. You get the Tuscany view without the Tuscany price, or the Kelowna price. For now. That window is the whole point. Which brings us to number 1, the only town here that doesn't just look Italian. Number 1, Trail, British Columbia. This is the one I couldn't stop thinking about. Down in the West Kootenay, on the banks of the Columbia River, sits a city of about 8,200 people, with recent estimates closer to 8,600. And here's what makes it different from everything else on this list. Trail doesn't just look like Italy. It genuinely carries a piece of Italy inside it. Roughly 1 in 5 residents has Italian heritage. The heart of it is the Gulch, a steep immigrant neighborhood that climbs above the river. And at its center stands the Cristoforo Colombo Lodge, founded in 1905 and still active more than a century later. Let me back up, because the story is the whole point. Trail grew around one of the largest lead zinc smelters in the world. In the early 1900s, that smelter pulled thousands of Italian immigrants across an ocean to a mountain valley they'd never seen. They settled the Gulch, they built the lodge, they brought bocce and espresso and a soccer tradition that still defines the city today. And here's the part that ties the whole video together. That smelter is still running. It still anchors the economy. And because the town stayed a working blue-collar place instead of a polished resort, it never priced its own people out. Trail homes regularly list in the 300 to 500,000 Canadian dollar range. Neighboring Rossland averages around 350,000. Compare that to British Columbia's provincial average, well north of 960,000, and the gap is staggering. So picture the contrast. Most people think of Italy as a place you fly to, drain your savings for, and leave. Trail offers terraced streets above a river, an Italian lodge older than most Canadian cities can claim, bocce balls clicking on a summer evening, espresso steam in an old Gulch cafe, and home prices a young family can actually reach. I do have to be honest about the trade-offs, because they're real. This is an industrial town, with the environmental questions that come with a century-old smelter. The services are smaller city. It's hours from any major Canadian city. And the crime severity index in the wider district has ticked up recently, so I won't pretend it's untouched. No town here is perfect, and I won't sell you one that is. But here's the detail I keep coming back to. Every other town on this list borrowed the Italian look. Trail earned it. The people who built those terraced streets actually came from Italy, and their grandchildren still roll bocce behind the same lodge. Picture this. Evening in the valley, the smelter glowing across the dark water, houses stacked up the hillside in the last of the light, And somewhere down in the gulch, the smell of fresh bread and strong coffee drifting out of a doorway that's been open for 100 years. That's not a town pretending to be Italy. That's a town that quietly became one. So that's 12 of them, scattered across British Columbia, Ontario, Quebec, and Nova Scotia, all wearing a little bit of Italy, some in the architecture, some in the hills, and one in its actual blood. Now I'm curious, which town surprised you most? Was it the rainbow harbor of Lunenburg, the desert vineyards of Osoyoos, or the Italian lodge still standing in Trail? And if you've ever visited one of these places, or remember when it felt different, slower, cheaper, quieter, tell me in the comments. Those memories are half the reason I make these. If you know someone who loves Canadian small towns, old vacation places, or the quiet corners most people drive past, send this their way. And if you want more of these, the forgotten and the overlooked, subscribe and stay with me. Because somewhere out there, on a hillside above a river, the light is still falling on a town that looks like Italy, and almost nobody knows it's there.